In our last video we created our first temporary job, and in this video we're going to allocate a contractor to that job. But first what we'll do is we'll repeat the candidate registration process just by way of reinforcement. So to do so we'll come up to our candidates, we'll add our candidate manually. We're going to parse the CV of our candidate. Remember, now we will onboard this candidate into our generic onboarding pipeline. Now before we continue, let's just refresh the process that we're going to follow as part of this registration. The generic onboarding pipeline, candidate will enter, they will register, and then the reviewer will determine what the next stage that candidate will be placed in. What we're going to do is we're going to get the candidate to register and we'll take them straight to induction. I'll show you how that will work. You'll recall when we have our candidate registration assessment, we specified that it would be reviewed, and it will be reviewed by our recruitment consultant at the head office. This is the link back to the organisational chart. So rather than sort of jump in and out of email and act as Desmond, we can do the same by mirroring him. So I mirror Desmond, and I'm now presented as though I am Desmond logged onto his system. Desmond now has tasks and assessments to complete and has also received a notification to complete his candidate registration. Now of course if he will have received an email and clicked on the link, and by doing so he is opening up this form just as I am doing now. So let's complete that form. Notice with skills that were received from the parsing of the CV. Likewise the employment history. We did scan the reference check, but it did not return the employer, so we need to update that. These fields are mandatory so that we know that when we create the reference checks we're creating with the right data. Completed, Desmond is finished, he saves as done. So I will now return back to my user account. And remembering, before we do so, I want to remind you about the organisational structure. And we can see in here that our recruitment consultant is Georgie Mendes, reporting to Jenny Jameson. So we click on Georgie, and I'm going to mirror now Georgie so that I can act in her role. Georgie has tasks to complete, tasks here, but also has notifications, so we can log on here. And Georgie now will complete the review of the candidate registration completed by Desmond. Two ways to do that. You can switch into list view. It's a good view I think for review because you can sort of see it without having to go page by page, and you can scroll back up. So I think changing to list view is a good option. So here we have the option of picking where Georgie now wants this candidate to progress to. Maybe Georgie knows this person, so therefore says, I want to take you straight to induction. So Georgie saves the review, having decided that Desmond should go straight to induction. Now, as per the pipeline, Desmond is now in the induction stage, so we will now go back to my original user, and I will now mirror Desmond so that I can complete the induction on his behalf. Desmond has a task. Induction has been created. He's also got a notification to let him know that his registration has been reviewed, so he's always up to date and knows what's happening as he progresses through the recruitment pipeline. So he clicks on his induction, and now he'll complete his induction. So we can download the document because we cannot proceed to the next question until we have done that. Upload our tax details. Add our bank account. You notice that these are what we call object response types. This question said it's an object response type. The response type is a bank account, hence it returns the form. It also knows that this account is based in Australia, so the form even represents itself for Australian bank branches, whereas it would represent for other countries depending on the country of your selection. Select the back branch, enter the bank account, add super, select the super fund, update next of kin, and finally update doctor's practice. Now remember, these are just examples of what you can do. You don't need to ask for a doctor's health if you don't want to. Doctor's practice if you don't want to. Entirely your choice. So Desmond has now completed his induction. Likewise, a review has been created for Georgie to review the induction before confirming that that candidate can now be employed onto jobs. So we'll come back to here and we will mirror Georgie so that we can see the notification and complete that review. Induction has been completed, ready for my review. Again, can come down the bottom, decide and confirm induction. Save as done. Now that's the end of the process of taking this candidate from a scanned CV through to inducted. I know we cheated, we ignored the reference check, we ignored the in-person interview and the phone screen, but we did get the information required to be able to allocate our new candidate, now contractor, Desmond, onto our jobs. So I'll go back onto my account. And we can review our contacts. And we can see now that Desmond is no longer a candidate, Desmond is a contractor. We can view here the information that we captured. We captured his Certificate 1 in health support, we captured his skills, and we also created a few documents. Normally you would see the reference check and the phone screen and so forth for Desmond here. So now let's go back to the job that we created, bring it all together. So it was a temporary job. Notice that it is bordered in red. Now the reason it's bordered in red is because this customer requires an order number and we don't yet have an order number on this job. Hence it's bordered in red, but it doesn't stop us from progressing. We do get stopped when we try to generate the invoice when there is no order number. So we can open this up. Now, do you recall that when we created this job, we could have had many positions under this job, but we're just operating with the single job at the moment, the enrolled nurse, and we wanted them on that schedule here for 3 weeks. So now I'm able to click on here to find the people who are available and have the competent skills to be able to meet this requirement. Now you will recall this job we said needed a Certificate 1 in Health. Desmond put in his candidate registration that he had a Certificate 1 in Health. You can open that up and you can see the qualifications here as well. Certificate 1 in Health Support. So Desmond is qualified for this job. So all we need to do now is we just drag Desmond into the shift. Now you might also recall that when we created this job we said it was a fill all shift, which means that the candidates needed to fill the entire shift. They needed to be available for the entire shift. Sometimes that is a requirement. It's not often a requirement, and we're going to show you when we drill down into all of the flexibility of the job creation just what we can do when we want to have part placement and so forth. But for the moment, Desmond Greenwich, we accept and allocate Desmond to the shift. So we can see Desmond is now fully allocated. Now you might also recall that we specified that we would generate timesheets when we created this job. Perhaps it would be a good idea if I just show you the definition of this job one more time. So we said we wanted 2, hence why there are 2 rows in the schedule. This is where we specified that the certificate that was required. Here we defined the schedule and we repeated it for 2 weeks. We saved it as a template so that we can reuse it again. We then defined the properties, the nurse's award that we would interpret these hours against. We then confirmed the pay week, the public holiday group and the invoice period for this job for this customer. The rates were returned because we had these rates stored against the account so that we knew that we'd be paying this, charging this. We also identified our on costs. Down here we specified fill all shift, hence why Desmond was allocated to the entire row. But we also specified that we wanted to generate the timesheet. So by generating the timesheets, we essentially create the pro forma timesheet for Desmond on the basis in a draft status. So here's Desmond. We look at our timesheets and we can see that we have timesheets for Desmond pre-created, ready for them to be approved or modified. Desmond will be able to do this on his mobile phone, and we will demonstrate that to you in a subsequent video. And Desmond can also scroll through, or in this case not Desmond, but your recruiter who's managing the schedule can scroll through and view the entire timesheets that have been created for this schedule. Now you can do a number of things within the schedule here, and we'll spend more time on this in subsequent video, but by way of example, I can click on here and I can see what Desmond is going to be paid for working on this shift, because it is interpreted, in this case, it is interpreted that 5 hours at base rate and then 2 hours at the time and a half rate for afternoon shift, and then 1 hour at double time. So this is where we can see what we're going to pay Desmond. Now we can also see here the number, so we need 1. We've actually partly allocated. We've got 1 allocated of 2. I'm going to show you in subsequent videos now how you can modify your quantities, extend your jobs, end your jobs. But that was as simple as it needs to be. We've gone from adding a candidate in a paperless manner right through to inducting them. True, I did skip the phone screen and I did skip the in-person interview, but the process is the same. We inducted the person, and as soon as they were inducted, they were available to be scheduled on a job, assuming that they were available, and they are qualified. Desmond is qualified, we're able to allocate him to the schedule, and we've already worked out what we're going to pay Desmond should he work the schedule. And in fact, we've already worked out the invoice values for Desmond in the schedule. But we're going to cover that in the next video. We'll complete this job, we'll add another candidate to it, we'll show you other options for managing your timesheets. We'll then mirror Desmond and he will complete his timesheets, and we're going to take you through the process of generating the payroll and generating an invoice to send to Kinder Health. Thank you very much. Hopefully now you're starting to see it all coming together, and hopefully you now can see that the effort initially at setting up the settings and making sure that the foundation is right starts to enable us to enjoy much more automation because the system has the knowledge to make the right decisions at the right time. Thank you very much.